from the New York Times. 22 states sue to stop Trump's birthright citizenship order. The lawsuit to block the president's executive order is the first salvo in what is likely to be a long-running legal fight over immigration policy. So I'll try to simplify this as much as I can. Under the 14th Amendment, it says all those born in the United States and subject to its jurisdiction therein are citizens. Donald Trump has issued an executive order basically stating that if you are born of people who are here unlawfully or here only temporarily, we will not recognize your citizenship. 22 states have sued him over this. It likely will, I believe it'll go to the Supreme Court. I don't know if
That's the goal.
Right. And then the question is, how does the Supreme Court rule? I will give you my thoughts first, real quick. My interpretation of the 14th Amendment, and Josie would probably know better, so I looked to you after this, was literally following the Civil War, they were trying to rectify what had happened. And so they said, what of the slaves? Well, obviously, anyone who's born here and subject to our jurisdiction is a citizen, right? Okay. Which meant from here and back, those people are citizens. I do not believe they intended for it to mean anyone at any point ever who comes here and as a kid, that kid would be a citizen. And that is the interpretation that I believe Trump is taking. I'm curious your thoughts, Josie, as the scholar of the Constitution.
So the 14th Amendment, it was written by John Brigham, I believe, from Ohio. And his interpretation of subject to the jurisdiction thereof means the complete jurisdiction, not a partial jurisdiction. And a partial jurisdiction would be people who are here temporarily, whether lawfully or unlawfully.
But was it descriptive or prescriptive? Was he saying from this point forward, all people who are born in this country shall be citizens? Or was he saying all of those that are here, referring to the slaves who were born here and are subject to our jurisdiction, are citizens? Was it both?
I would imagine it was both if it's in the Constitution.
I think, again, I'll throw it to you, Massie. My interpretation was they were saying, hey, look, the Civil War happened. We don't want insurrectionists in the Senate or in Congress. The president, is officers of the government. We want to make sure that the people who are enslaved are citizens. I don't know that I look at that in the history and see that as them saying from this point forward, all people hereinafter. I'm curious.
Before I answer that question, I have a question for Connor and Dominik. Do you grant in Poland? Do you get birthright citizenship, and do you get it in Great Britain?
It's not the same as it is in America. When you burn, yes, but it's much harder to get citizenship than it is in America, I would say. You would think differently, but it's not easy.
What about Great Britain?
You used to, I think it's until 1984. Weirdly enough, the woman currently leading the Conservative Party was an anchor baby. Her mother flew over from Nigeria, had her on the NHS, brought her back, and then she emigrated back at 16. Yeah, so she's as British as you and me. It is basically whether or not you get birthright citizenship doesn't really matter, just because the Home Office is rubber stamping visas and citizenship like it's going out of fashion.
So I just wondered, but now I'll answer your question. It was obviously about slavery. They weren't trying to create birthright citizenship when they did that amendment to the Constitution. And I asked Grok, it was just in a judiciary meeting with Jim Jordan and all the people on the Judiciary Committee an hour before I came over here, and we were talking about this question. And so while we're sitting there, I pull up my phone and I ask Grok, when they passed this amendment, did they intend to grant birthright citizenship? And Grok's like, no, this was all about slavery. But it has it's evolved into that, is what it's evolved to. But that was not the intent. And I think this is going to go to the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. It's going to be one of those 5-4 or 6-3 decisions. Yeah. And you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah. So I'd never even considered the thought that it couldn't be something that was forward motion, but I have actually in my head for a different part of the 14th Amendment. I think it was the
Section 3.
Section 3, exactly, because that creates a constitutional crisis. That's saying you can't you can't be an insurrectionist. Our country was built on insurrection. Our country was built. That's why we're here. So the president, Jefferson Davis, so the president of the Confederacy, he was not pardoned, but they just let everything go about him. They're like, we're not going to push forward with any of this because this is going to be a constitutional crisis. And same thing. So they forgave all the Confederates, and I think that's the way to
Well, there's a lot of
It's-
complicated history.
no no
Reconstruction.
judge worth their weight wanted to take these cases because they go against the integrity of the United States.
I mean, even though all of the context and history does matter, like even all the arguments that are being made here, none of them, take into account the fact that you can now travel so much faster than you could at obviously any other point in history. And so, a woman can easily get on a plane or travel by car in 2 days to go from, almost anywhere in South America, drive
That's right.
into the United States and have a baby very easily. So these kind of, the fact that now modern travel is so much faster.
And they actually do.
It makes anchor babies a considerable problem that actually has to be readdressed because of the fact that we live in a different time.
Careful, Phil. That's the argument they use against AR-15s.
Maybe we need to help our liberal friends understand why this interpretation exists and why Trump is moving in this direction. Maybe we need to create a sci-fi film where Hitler's parents visit America as tourists, give birth to baby Hitler, then travel back to Austria, Germany, or whatever. I don't know. And then, as the war is coming to its conclusion, he escapes to America, where he's an American citizen and runs for president and becomes president. Yeah. You'd say that's an absurdity. Why would we allow such an evil adversary of this country to be president? Well, he was born here. That makes him a citizen. So as long as he lives here for, I think, 10 years after the fact or something to that effect, then he can be, right?
I didn't see.
No, that makes no sense.
There's someone in the chat that has made a comment. I didn't catch their name, but it caught my eye as it passed by. But it's not lawful for children to profit from parental crimes. Mm-hmm. So if a parent comes into the United States and violates the law by coming into the United States, how it should be unlawful for them to profit by gaining citizenship by the crime committed by the parent.
Let me also add some other historical context that I may get in trouble for. I'm not advocating for this, okay, disclaimer, but you had to own property to vote at that time.
And that makes sense.
You did.
It was less of an argument about were you a citizen or not. It was like, are you part of this fabric of this region? Do you own property? Do you have a stake in what's going on here?
So
I'm not in
how
Congress,
about
so maybe
this,
I could advocate
Rep.
for
Massey?
that.
How did you contribute it?
How about I'm going to ask you this, and I'm actually curious how it works in Poland. I talked with Vivek Ramaswamy a couple of years ago, and we were trying to figure out how you bring responsibility to the vote. That you must have some civic responsibility. And one of the ideas that we floated, I don't think Vivek is for this idea now, but he floated the idea: you must sign up for selective service to get your voter card. Men and women. It doesn't mean you'll be drafted. And we haven't used the draft in 50, 60 years. It means that you are willing to be in order to vote. I'm in favor of something like that. I'm curious what you think.
One of my favorite science fiction authors, Robert Heinlein, proposed that.
Yeah.
That you had to have that kind of stake in it. But he also had
Service
another
guaranteed citizenship.
Yeah, he had another proposal, which was if you could solve a quadratic equation inside of the voting booth, your vote mattered. And then he said, we'll put a twist on this. If you fail to solve the equation after entering the voting booth, you never leave the voting booth. You disappear. If you
the floor opens up and you go into the...
And he said under this scenario, you would have informed, educated 12-year-old girls who could vote. And then you would have adults, their parents, who couldn't.
Right, but solving a quadratic equation doesn't confer understanding of global affairs, But I'm curious, in Poland, how does it work?
Well, we never had this kind of problems because we are 40 million people now. Most of us had to flee our country during the communism. And you have to remember that when we gained back our independence in 1918, we had the communists after World War II for 70 years occupying our country. So many people had to leave Poland, fled to US, seeking for help because communists basically killed a lot of Polish people. So in 1989, we had partially free elections. And I would say that the real major democracy would start about, I would say, 2005, because like 2001, post-communist won, using obviously their money from Russia and using their influence. So in 2005, that was the first government after communism in Poland, conservative government. So we never experienced this time because Poland was occupied, and that is the difference between you and us.
It's pretty crazy. The area I grew up in Chicago, largely Polish migrants.
Because of the communists.
Exactly.
Most of them coming from the country, from the families where one or two members, like grandparents, fought against Germany or against Russia or against communism during the communism. They had to flee, they had to save their lives. And that is a real, because there is a difference between migrant and asylum seeker. They were coming here to find asylum, to save their lives because of the political system. In
Ukraine, they had what's called, as I was described to me, Wafer Cake.
Mhm.
Is that something that you guys had in Poland?
Yeah.
So what it was is there's no food, and so they would get these thin wafers.
That's right.
And they would condense milk and pour it between each wafer because that was the best they could do for some kind of dessert.
And the cheapest, yeah.
And
Yes.
the cheapest.
And you have to remember that during the communism, I remember communism as a kid. I remember queues to buy shoes, to buy sugar, to buy meat.
How long?
Well, I spent the whole night to buy shoes. I didn't get them. So that's
People do that here for the new iPhone.
That's my, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's funny now. It wasn't funny for me when I was a kid.
right.
Yeah.
So this is the reason why I fight communists around the world in a way I can. This is why I hate communists. That's why I will never ever stop fighting communism, because I know what communism is. I experienced it. My father, my grandfather, who fought against communists, as I told you, for all of us, war ended in 1945. My grandpa said, no, communists, Russians took over Poland and they're occupying Poland. This is war. He fled to the forest and he fought against communists until 1947. Then my father was the one who started Solidarity in my town. Then
Wow.
Then I started studying law to become a prosecutor because I was dreaming to put all the communists to the jail. I found out many of prosecutors are communists themselves. So I said, okay, I'm going to try to be above them in some way. So I'm going to be a politician. And that's my war. That's my personal war because of my family's experience. That's why I think Kamala was a communist. All of them are communists, not a Democrats, because what they did was pure communism. That's why, thank God, President Trump won.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.